Do you feel like you took a wrong turn in life? Welcome to Morrow's Motivations, where we talk with people who educate, motivate, and captivate you with inspirational stories. Here's Don Tyrel.
All right, Tyrel, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I am doing okay myself. Just, taking advantage of all of this extra time that we have right now in our country because of this coronavirus going around. And I thought, there's still positive things that can be done. And it just gives me more of a motivation to talk to wonderful people like yourself.
Sure does.
And yes, I want to also say thank you for interviewing me a little while ago for my special episode that I released for my birthday weekend. It was great. Thank you for that.
No problem. That was fun. I've never done it before, so, it came with its own bugs, but it was fun.
Well, I hope that because of that, you feel a little bit more comfortable about the process. And of course, having the conversation we're going to start in that this time will be more focused on you and your awesomeness.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course, of course. So, Tyrell, just after going over a little bit about your experiences that you've had and just a lot of the goals that you've had, let me ask you one thing um, that you really look at as far as how you define success. Like, what does that term mean to you, success?
It's a good question. I would say success is determined probably by your core values. Like, for example, we could measure success in monetary terms, which there is definitely merit to that and a lot of good things that go with that. But I think the main thing I think of when I think of success is how well did you adhere to the principles you chose to live by. And I think the reason why I choose that one is because um, I guess because that determines to me the strongest of what kind of quality of life I'll have. So like even if I came out with if I inherit or through my own work establish tons and tons of money, it doesn't do you much good if you don't do anything with your core values with that money or with your relationships at home, right? Like you could be as poor as could be, but if you live by your values, you generally have a higher standard of living than those who don't. And so it's kind of an interesting quest because sometimes it can seem elusive, like happiness, where you can meet people who are wealthy and aren't happy, or people who are poor and aren't happy, but you can also find the exact same on the other side. And so there's something different than just monetary success or physical success or uh, those. I guess in a way we could call this mental success.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I'd say when you ask me the question, what defines success, and I would say it is centered in the values you hold and how well you've held up to those values.
Awesome. Yes, I agree. And I wonder what are like some core values that you have really, you know, decided to live by as far as in your personal life.
Good question. I would say one of them is honesty. Honesty is a big one, and I think it's interesting because it's one that kind of changes because there's times where I would say like I was thinking I was being honest or honest to myself maybe, but later as I'd get older and stuff like that, I'd discover that I was maybe lying to myself. Like one of the ones I had the hardest time with was I had to some degree believed that I was always going to be poor, and that for whatever reason that was my lot in life, or all these different kind of things, and that to me was like the honest life because I don't know, it was I don't know, it was like I had to be careful of lying to myself. Maybe I didn't trust money. I don't know. I have no idea what kind of drove all of that. But when I honestly would look at where I was at and kind of think about, how I define success, or how I felt about success, I discovered that was actually a reflection on a lie I believed about myself, and
Hmm.
maybe that I wasn't worth it, or I believed that I wasn't smart enough, or all these different kind of things. And so there's that internal aspect of honesty, and identifying what is your true value, and
Mhm.
where does it come from. And so that was one of them. Another one was honesty about hard work, right? Like I thought as a kid I was a hard worker, and then um, you meet
Mhm.
people in your life and you're like, oh my gosh, they're a way harder worker than I am. Like they're way better, and it's humbling, because then
Mhm.
I can see, okay, if I'm being honest with myself, there are definitely things I can improve to become better at hard work. And so there's kind of this fine line, right? Like depending on how you compare your success metric changes the way you want to define honesty. And so that's
Mhm.
been kind of fun, because it's a continuous process, right? It's not like you arrive at I guess a perfect definition of honesty, other than you've got to live to an honest lifestyle. So things like don't intentionally mislead people. That's a big
Mhm.
one for me. Because sometimes I do it on accident. Like if I misunderstood the terms of a deal, something like that. I didn't mean for something like that to happen, but you learn from those experiences. You learn how to overcome things, and you have to be honest with yourself. You have to kind of sit there and say, you know what, I screwed up. I
Absolutely.
I was
Mhm.
the one that didn't, read it, or whatever your reason is, and always take the step of overcoming that. And so yeah.
I love that. It sounds like, having that self-reflection and self-guidance, being accountable is very important. And in terms of being honest, I'm quite I found that interesting that you said that, when you looked at yourself, you thought that you'd always be in one, level of, a social economic status of being poor, um, and that you didn't feel so much like you were a hard worker. Would you say, I guess, now looking back and reflecting on the work that you did in that time to comparative to what you do now, that you feel like you are a hard worker and that you were just doing the work that was in front of you or that was meant for you to do at that point, and it gradually just became more and more?
Yeah, I'd say that. I think it's kind of it's kind of interesting how you can define work too, right? Like for example,
Hmm.
as I've gotten older, I've learned how to work smarter, and if you couple that with hard work, that or consistent work, I'm actually going to change that to consistent work. Um, then you get a lot of success. Like for example, when I first started dabbling in real estate, there's so many different like things to know. There's a lot of moving parts. You've got how money flows, how contracts are supposed to be established, whether you want to do rentals or fixer uppers, or there's so many moving parts, right? And so I think what happens a lot is we'll get overwhelmed and we'll stop, or we'll whatever it is, anything new will take work to get over the learning curve, and then it's just continuous learning at that, hopefully, because if you ever think you've arrived, you're usually in trouble. And so a lot of those things that kind of go with it. So I would say, to answer your question, it's not that I wasn't ever not a hard worker, because when I look back on it, I always tried to do the best with the actions that I had at that time, or the goal that I had at that time. But as I've gotten
Hmm.
older, you learn more about what's effective and what isn't, or what
Hmm.
takes less energy and what takes more energy to accomplish certain things, and you start learning, I guess, wisdom, uh, on how you want to apply those learning experiences. And so, what's critical is figuring out, I guess, where to put the energy, right? And so I think with age, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. The other part of that I would say is, learning to overcome fears, right? Like sometimes our biggest inhibitor of honest hard work is fear of failure, or
Oh, yes.
like it's a big one, or fear of losing something, right?
Mhm.
And feeling
Mhm.
like you can never come back, or fear is kind of your worst enemy when it comes to honest hard work.
Yes, it absolutely is. And it's incredible that, you when you stop and really look at all the things that you worried about or were afraid of. I know for myself, that was definitely a part of youth for me. And that's, I think, where you experiment with it the most, when you're trying to, fit in with a certain crowd at school or certain group of friends. And you have to learn how to, at some point, just become yourself and let yourself, like, stop being, like you said earlier, dishonest with yourself, and just say, no, this is who I am. This is what I like. This is my style, whether it's a fashion or music. And you just say, either accept me or don't, but I'm just going to keep being me. And it's amazing how sometimes you can really take many years. In some cases, some take a lifetime before they get to that point of saying, wow, I really did not accept all of the importance of what I brought to the table, what I brought to humanity, in a sense. And that's, that's a good thing that you discovered that when you did. You mentioned that you have done some work in real estate as one of your, career goals. And so I'm curious, what personal examples did you have in your life that navigated you or prepared you for that career path?
That's a good question. I'm actually going to go two parts on that. So don't let me forget that question, because you're making the comments about like high school and um, as we're trying to figure out where we're at. And I would say even as you get older, that still comes with you, because like I want to. Sometimes I have fear that my wife won't like what I'm the risk I'm taking, so to speak, and those kind of things. And it's scary, right? Because you're about to invest a bunch of money into something, or a bunch of time into something, or whatever it is. And so I would say some of my fears sometimes is, what if my wife doesn't accept this, or what if I don't know, what if this fails, and now I've not only put myself in a bind, but everybody in my family circle, my wife, my kids. And so that can get scary. And so it's that balance, those kind of things. As for
Mhm.
as for real estate, what started real estate, that's kind of funny. It was kind of on accident. I can't remember who introduced it to me. Oh, I remember. I uh, I started working for a general contractor when I was 16, I think, and he had made a reference to a book called Rich. Oh shoot! Now that I want to say it, I can't think of it. It's done by Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um,
Robert
Started it all
Kiyosaki
for
book.
me, but yeah, Robert Kiyosaki. Oh, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's the book. Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki was the one who
Hmm.
wrote it. And
Very good book.
at
Yes.
16, that was a novel idea. Yeah, so that's what started it. That was the whole thing that began the idea. The biggest challenge with it, though, was that I was scared. I
Hmm.
would read the books. I had a lot of fun reading the books, but I was always so scared to pull the trigger. And I didn't do it until I was 20, 23. Nope, I would have been older than that, 24, 25, and bought a house in Logan, Utah, rented
Hmm.
out. Or what I ended up doing was I rented out the rooms to other college students and stuff like that. So it was really kind of fun. I was living there. That's what started it. That's what pulled the trigger. Learned a ton through that, which I wish I could say that resolves the fear, but it doesn't, because the numbers just change and the fear is still there. But you just kind of figure it out, and you do your best to mitigate risk by doing your education, figuring everything out. Uh,
Hmm.
Getting a good team with you, a good lawyer, good real estate agent, or however you choose to make your plan, right? You got to come up with a plan, and then, patch the holes as you discover them. And so that's kind of what started it, that. And I had the opportunity to work for a friend who owned a candy business, and we would just fill up vending machines, and he'd buy candy, and I worked for him, and that was really fun. We had conversations about like owning your own business, what the risks were with that. And I remember reading a lot of self-help books during that time. I was probably 17 at that time, and that's kind of what started the career of real estate. And so that's been kind of fun. But I do have to admit, the real estate part, I kind of have two sides, I guess, of how that's going. I guess I diversify a little bit. I have my like education career, and my actual career is as you just make money. Management is basically what I do a lot of with IT, and then real estate's my other side of it, right? And so the benefit of diversification is that it's diversified. The downside, though, is I think it takes more time. The more you specialize, the I think higher potential to excel, but there's also higher risk, right? Because if you are specialized in one thing and all of a sudden the demand for that specialization goes down, you have sometimes a higher difficulty of different things. So, you got to pick your plan, pick your poison, I guess, if you will, and and go for it.
It's interesting. I love that you realized that when you were 17, that you started seeing through experiences of just going out there. You mentioned being with your roommates and selling candy with a good friend of yours, and all of that. It seemed like it built your confidence, and it seemed like it helped you to really appreciate just what you would be doing, just how to feel comfortable walking and working with individuals every day. Now, how did you feel personally as you saw yourself start to achieve the goals that you wanted, both in terms of your career, as you were branching out and finding yourself in that area?
How did I find myself achieving the goals? I'd say,
yeah. How did you feel? Like, how did that come?
I think what started a lot of it was education. I think, every single time that every major stepping point, I guess I would say, came with a mentor. First of it is exposure to an idea, right? The first step, I would say, is the exposure to an idea where you maybe haven't thought of it in that way before, or maybe it just started as a passion, right? Like I will admit, when I was younger, the idea of money, earning money was a motivator, right? But eventually that becomes an issue because, it can't just be about the money, because then what, right? Like it becomes wishy-washy, and what else, right? There has to be a passion level behind it. And so what was kind of fun is as I would meet people and talk to people and establish relationships and have a mentor or multiple mentors, the relationship is built around a common goal, a commonality, right? Something that goes forward with there. And so what started me actually pulling the trigger on trying to do real estate was a course I took online about the real estate process. And this was really quite fun because I had a mentor, and I remember the first step was you had to go and kind of learn about how public records were. And so the step was you were required to go to the public records office and ask questions about, like, where do they keep all the grants and stuff? How do you get a grant? Or not grant, sorry, building permits, and questions about, like, who owns what property? How do you find that how do you find that information? And that was really helpful because then you learn a lot about, like, potential buyers and who to talk to and different things like that. And what was cool is I could then go back to this mentor. His name was Mike, and he, would ask us questions about what we had learned and what did it mean, and then I remember another one of those that was especially meaningful for me was we were to look up like 3 different properties and try to learn everything we could about these 3 different properties as a prospective deal, and 3 properties we thought would be a good deal. And then we would go to him, and I went to Mike and was telling him about these 3 properties, and I actually really thought 2 of them was a really, really good deal. And I remember as I started asking, or as I was presenting the properties to him, he started asking questions I had never thought about before. Things like, what deferred maintenance is on this property? And I'd be like, oh shoot, I didn't even think about that. Like, what kind of maintenance would there need to be? And things like, what would be the potential rent on this property in this area, I should say. And I discovered there was a lot of questions I didn't know the answers to. A lot of stuff that I had no idea on. And what was interesting is at first I was really embarrassed about it. I was almost mad about it because I was like, oh man, I must be dumb, right? I must not have known. And what's interesting is when that happens, sometimes we start to hide from our learning experience. But the opposite is really the big piece, right? Like when I was like, oh man, yeah, he's right. I did not know the answers to that. I need to find that out. And so when I turn around and go and discover that information, it was questions that I would never forget again when I do my other rental property analyses. And it's just interesting. It's just really fun. And so I'd say the mentor is the biggest part of that.
I agree. I love mentoring, and I feel like you find mentors in just about every area or field that you work or at school or in your community, and they're really important. And you're right, feeling that trepidation at first when you're kind of like, when you're learning, you kind of want to step back, but then the mentor does really what they do so instinctively, and they just kind of guide you along. They encourage you. They never make you feel out of place or not smart about a certain thing. They help you to just eventually get that groove and get that comfortability until you find that niche that works for you. And I've, like you've been on the receiving end of that, and it's a wonderful feeling. And I agree. I thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of these wonderful individuals do not get the opportunity to really have the recognition that they deserve for the work that they do, and the, like you said, having the values that they have, just being able to want to motivate people.
Yeah.
It goes such a long way. And
sometimes,
hopefully,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say,
go ahead.
sometimes one of my biggest learning experiences was actually from a mentor that I don't know if I would say was trying to be a mentor or whatever. He was very rough around the edges. He was my the boss when I was 16 that was a general contractor. He was one of the few mentors, if you will, that I was scared of, right? Like I was employed by him. I cost him money sometimes, and he would let me know. Like I was scared of him because
you did.
Right. And so I don't know if he was thinking, he was thinking dollar signs, right? He was concerned about making sure that his business was profitable, that I was a profitable employee. And so he was not afraid to come and tell me when I was wrong. And so I was scared of him. My personality was way more easygoing, but I learned faster from him than probably any of my other mentors. We could maybe say it was because of fear or whatever, but it was really because he just was so clear as to why I was wrong, right? He was not afraid to beat around the bush. He would just come and tell me, hey, when you do this, you cost me money, and don't ever do it again. And, so it's kind of an interesting thing, because I think sometimes our biggest enemies, so to speak, right, can be some of our biggest mentors too. It all depends on the attitude of how you come into this relationship and what it is that you want to accomplish.
So now, as you're in the current role that you're in, as a manager, how have you felt and seen what being a mentor is like, and and helping those that work, with you, that you get to really guide every single day. What kind of an experience has that been like for you so far?
Oh, I love it. I think it's so much fun. So to add, I guess, context to that, I'm a manager at Best Buy, and
Hmm.
so I have a wonderful opportunity to go across two other industries that are my favorite. One is people, management, sales, that whole relationship with people. I think that is so exciting. That's probably one of the reasons why I like real estate, because you have to deal with so much people, right? There's mortgage brokers, there's all these different kind of things, and Best Buy is no different. You've got the different teams that you've got to work with. You've got your customers, and the whole end goal is to provide a product or a service for somebody. Plus, developing the people inside the company to do it adequately and even excel at it. And so I love it. I think it's so much fun. I think it's hard, really, really hard, because you have so many moving parts that you've got to be able to manage time. You've got to figure out what's going on, and you also have to kind of see through the cloud and figure out what's most important, right? Like
Hmm.
what's the critical point that you need to get across in the small amount of time that you have, because we all have the same amount of time. For most of us, that's 40 hours a week to apply to our, I guess, career goal. You can do more than that, but I would argue that most don't. Well, I guess I can't say that. I can see situations where that's not the case. And then, so I love it. I think it's really, really fun to try I say try, but to help people. And I guess I say try because it's a two-way relationship, right? You can only help people progress as far as they're willing to progress. And
Hmm.
the big trick is to help them identify that they want to move forward. And as you help them tap into that potential, it gets really, really rewarding, because you establish, friendships, right? Like,
Hmm.
it gets fun. It gets really, really fun and hard, because sometimes you have to have hard conversations, but really,
Hmm.
really fun. And so, like, an example I had just recently is so with the COVID, you know, 19,
Hmm.
the disease, Best Buy has closed their doors, but we are still servicing our customers. So customers can come to the curb, and we can our salespeople will call you in your car. We'll talk to you about what it is that you need and what you want, and get you everything you need. And then if you choose to buy it right there, you pay for it, and one of the associates will bring out your products to your car, and we adjust it, and it's really, really quite fun. But the one challenge you have is right when somebody arrives, they don't know what the heck's going on, and or what to expect, and this seems different, and a lot of people don't even like the idea of the process, right? And so
Right. Hmm.
so the person who is being introduced to the customer first needs to take a moment to sit there and kind of explain what's happening, and also share the information in a way that makes it sound appealing, because generally speaking, most of the customers who take the moment to give it a shot end up loving it. They never had to leave their car. They got to talk to somebody who knew what was going on, and they got to get their products, and all from their car. And so a lot of them were talking about how they liked the experience. There's a couple situations where it's not ideal, but my experience was I got to help the person at the front, the person who's first, the first person saying hi to the customer, make it sound appealing, right? That's the trick. And
Hmm.
because sometimes it's not, right. Like, you're coming up and you're like, I want to see headphones, right? Like, how do I see the headphones if I can't even get in? And
Right.
and so you have to take a moment to kind of sit there and talk about that. And I had a lot of fun helping, you know, our associates kind of sit there and go, okay, look, they're coming to an experience that they didn't necessarily see, or maybe not even want, and we've got to give them an opportunity to experience a good experience here at Best Buy with this whole COVID situation, and
Hmm.
for their safety. And so it was really, really fun as we'd talk about it, and people would have those aha moments where, like, oh yeah, if I say it like this, it makes sense to everybody.
Hmm.
And so it was really fun. That's an example.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're right. In the midst of this COVID-19, the coronavirus epidemic, it is bringing out a lot of more, I would say, interesting ways for us to find a way to connect because, you know, for a long time, I remember hearing that it was an issue and a concern, that so many millennials and youth were, on technology so much that they were losing that personal interaction, with people and how to like really look them in the eye and really just talk with them and, just have that interpersonal communication. Now it's funny because we're seeing that you can still have it, but that you just have to look at it as it being in a way like not necessarily in the same way that we're used to
Mm-hmm.
and that we've always had, but that it can still be something meaningful
Mm-hmm.
until, this epidemic passes over time. And so that's awesome. I mean, that's a show of true leadership and mentorship that you've been able to not only adapt and see that vision, but you've been able to convey that with others to make sure that they, stay confident and stay calm as they're still trying to adapt and wrap their head around, this situation that happened really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. It makes me wonder, and this is a question that I feel you might know the answer to, but just in asking you as far as, your future and looking at what you would like to do and what you're currently doing right now, um, what like where would you see yourself as far as your next goal and your next big accomplishment that you are preparing to achieve? What would that be?
Ooh, I like that. So my next immediate goal is actually happening right now. So with the COVID-19 virus, you have so many things that have changed, right? Like the markets have changed for houses, or are going to change, I should say. Mortgage
Hmm.
rates are unpredictable. Um, Fear causes drastic changes to economies. Um, and with all of this going on, like this is it's during major change periods like this that you will have some of your biggest opportunities. And so for me, it has been trying to figure this whole process out. Like when something like this happens, what does that do to the real estate market? How do I know what to do? And to be honest, I'm still figuring that out, right? Like I'm still trying to learn what to expect, what kind of things.
Hmm.
I This is where all of your experience up to this point is going to have an effect on what's going to happen. And so my next goal is to make actually a deal soon, because I think there's going to be more opportunities that's going to come from this, from the whole change, the scope and things like that. It's just identifying what those opportunities are going to be. So that's kind of the big thing. From every change comes opportunity. We see that at
Hmm.
Best Buy, right? Like there's been huge changes. If you want to create a better customer experience with the scenario, it's about rolling with the punches and figuring out ways to reach people, right? It's all about reaching people.
Hmm.
And so who knows, maybe Best Buy won't exist in the future here, and you just take the skills and keep going for the next ride. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of the main thing. Like my expectation, my immediate goal right now, obviously, is to help Best Buy be successful, but also because they've helped me be successful. But also, it's to I plan on making a deal here soon, and so going through this whole learning experience and those kind of things. That's kind of my big goal next.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What would be a legacy that you would want to leave for your family, for your community, the people you work with? Like if you had one goal and one wish for them to remember you a certain way, how would that be?
I would say that my legacy I'd hope to leave That's a good question, because there's so many things. Like when you try to think about yourself, there's so many things that you would hope people see in you, right? Like you hope people see the good in you, and that people see the all the good traits, right? How honest he was, and how hardworking he was, and all those kind of things. So it's kind of an interesting question, because I don't know. In the end, people see what they want to see to some degree, and I think what I hope to leave behind, though, is honesty. I think that's the big one. That he was honestly trying to do his best with the resources he had stewardship over. That he was doing his best with the people that he was in contact with. That he was conscientiously aware of his opportunities, and sometimes that was a little bit loaded, because it's pretty hard to be consciously aware of all your opportunities. There's so much potential that one individual has that it's that one's tough. And so my kids, that's another one. I hope that my kids are part of that legacy, because
Mm-hmm.
I hope I wish the world for them. I hope that they'd be productive, and even if they're not, like, that I'm gonna love them anyways. It's just there's so many things that go with that. And so I don't know. That's a good question. I've not really thought about that one a whole lot, other than just moving forward, always progressing, don't stop learning. Adjust with every punch. It's kind of funny. I think about what's that show called? My wife watches it all the time. It's The Boxer. It's not Rambo. It's got Sylvester Stallone or whatever in it. And he talks about, there's a scene in one of those movies where he talks about how, life will beat you down if you let it. And, it's not about how many times you're beat up. It's about, how many times you get up, how many times you just keep moving forward. And I would say that's the main thing. Hopefully the legacy that I leave is that he just kept moving forward.
That is a Rocky Balboa movie, and yes, one of the greats. I love that series. So no, I caught that immediately.
Oh, good.
No,
I'm not very good with TV. My wife watches it. Or I shouldn't say she watches it all the time, but she is a movie buff, and I could barely tell you most actors.
Well, now you have some time where you can probably catch up on it. So I would highly recommend it. But thank you so much, Tyrel. I definitely appreciate you spending this time with me. And yes, I know that you still have so many great things ahead of you, and your new little one. Congratulations on that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Morrow's Motivational Podcast. Please join us again next time.